Alright. So, welcome to our presentation about the venture, an effective response to localized needs. Firstly, in the introduction, I'll tell you what the presentation will be about and how we got to do this research in the first place. The presentation itself will be about the way we handled the research and the choices we made going along it and why we made those choices. There will also be a little bit about the results in the end. But because of time constraints, we couldn't do the results and everything in there in great detail, so those are, of course, in the report itself. When Peggy and I first got to go to Wales in August of 2008, we didn't really know what an adventure playground was. We'd never heard of the concept, we never knew anything about it, and we still don't know of any in the Netherlands. So basically we came here without having a clue what we were about to do, what was expected of us, or even what the venture was as an organization. Of course, when we got here, our views were changed drastically. We got to know what the venture was, the people who came here, the community it's in, and we were intrigued by the way they work, especially with playwork, a profession we don't know in the Netherlands, adventure playgrounds in themselves, the interactions between the staff and the children. Everything was very new and fresh to us. So when we got the opportunity to do research in our 4th year of social work in the Netherlands, we both jumped at the chance of doing the research with the venture and seeing how the venture was started and how it came to be as successful as it is now. Oh wait, that's your turn.
Okay. Well, first we're gonna talk about the main question of our research, and in order to answer the main question, we made up 4 sub-questions. Then we're gonna talk about the main goal of our research and how we did it in the strategy. After that, we're gonna talk about the final product. Well, it's the report itself. And then we're gonna answer the question: what makes the venture effective in the community? After that, we're going to do the theorems, but Toby, I have to pick one, and then we have to discuss that one. And then, there is time for questions or.
Okay.
I think that maybe. Yeah.
Alright. So the main question we had when setting out to do this research was what makes the venture effective in the community. Now, effective in this context means that it was built by people from the community. It's lasted for over 30 years now. People still come down on a daily basis and voluntarily as well. People from all over the world have come to see how the venture works and how they can incorporate it in their own work methods. The venture has gained various prizes in the field of social work. And the community means the service users of the venture, which are mainly the children growing up in Kaya Park.
We have 4 sub-questions. I will take you to the first one. What makes the venture unique as an effective response to specific local needs? Well, basically we wanted to know because, as Gavin told, we never, seen anything like this before. And it has a unique approach, and we just wanted to know why the venture is as effective as it is. So, we wanted to make sure what is it that makes the venture unique. And that what we wanted to achieve with the first question.
One of the things that does make the venture unique are, of course, their work methods, which again we'd never seen before. So our second sub-question is which methods does the venture use as a response to the localized needs? And basically we wanted to know what kind of different professions there are present at the venture and how they work alongside each other.
Yeah, that was question 3. And the last one is what makes the children and youngsters voluntarily return to the venture every day. Since a lot of children are here almost every day, and we wanted to know what makes the venture attractive to them, why are they returning, because they don't have to come here, but they choose freely to come here. So we were really interested in what makes the venture attractive to them to come here every day. So that's the 4th question we had.
The main goal we wanted to achieve with the report itself was to help guide future students who come to do their placement at the venture. Because again, we didn't know what to expect when we first got here, and we had a very different view of what the venture was than what it actually is. So we hope this report will help give future students a bigger picture of the venture itself and the way they work.
Well, the second goal was we think the venture is a good practice example, and we wanted to, well, in our conclusions, we just captured the main thing we found that makes the venture unique, and we wanted to give that to other people as a guidance from how they can, well, put them in their own organization and how they maybe benefit of it, of the knowledge, well, we gained during our research.
We'll now talk a bit about the strategy we employed in doing the research. We chose to do a couple of interviews with various people so we could get different opinions and different views on the venture, and the different people who work here gave some examples of that. We had interviews with the staff, which were on a one-to-one basis. That's because the staff have a vast knowledge of the venture and most of them have worked here for a number of years. A couple of staff members have been homegrown in the sense that they used to come down to the venture when they were little and they continue to come here as they work here now. These interviews were done as informal conversations in which we just asked them a number of things about the venture and they gave us the answers to help give us the best information and the most information we could use for our reports.
Besides staff, we also interviewed the volunteers, especially the young people that volunteer here, because we think, well, that it was really important to see why they keep, well, coming back to the venture and why they want to volunteer here. And we think, well, they grow up here, but they use the venture as children, and they have a lot of knowledge. And we were interested in how come they really want to do volunteering here, and what keeps them attracted to this place, and yeah, what makes them still want to be here, even when they're older. And yeah, that was really important to us to know.
We also interviewed the service users themselves, which again are mostly the children aged 5 to 18 who use the venture on a daily basis. We chose to do these interviews in smaller groups of 2 or 3 children at a time. We chose to do this because children are, I've lost the words now, but they usually speak more about their views when they're together with others, and because we used to work at the venture, we can be a bit intimidating or influence their answers, which we didn't want to do. We chose to do these interviews during art sessions in which the children would draw or create things about the venture while talking about it. We found this to be a really helpful tool as well, because sometimes the children wouldn't say certain things, but they would draw it and they would elaborate on their drawings afterwards. And this was a very helpful tool in writing our report and getting their opinions.
We also compared the research and the findings we got during our research with theoretical models, because we wanted to compare them with existing things, because the venture didn't just build, but it was based on several theoretical models, and also because a lot of things we think we found here can be traced back to some views and models that already exist, not totally one model, but bits and parts of different things. So we thought it would be really nice to compare it with that, and give some information about that as well.
Our final product is the report, which you've both read by now, hopefully. I forgot the words again, Peggy.
The report, we wanted to capture the venture as a total, as organization, but also in the field of other organization, that was quite hard to begin with, because it's really hard to picture an organization, especially if you write for other people who haven't been down here, to capture everything the venture is. But we try to capture a main image about the organization as a whole, and also in in the community and also in in Wales or within other organization. And we hope that we manage and achieve that one. And that's what we wanted to achieve for the report.
Now, coming back to the main question we stated at the beginning, what makes the venture effective in the community? What we found through our research were 8-point figure. So we'll now go through these points and elaborate a little bit upon them. So the first of these points is the sense of ownership. When the venture was first started in the late 70s, it was done with the help of people from the community. They helped build it and they helped protect it. This gave them a sense of ownership over the venture. They felt the place was partly theirs. This is a viewpoint that the venture has always stimulated throughout the years and is still very much present today. A lot of the children who come down to the venture today still help improve the venture or change certain things about it, and this still does give them a sense of ownership, and they do feel they belong here and the venture is partly theirs.
And the second one, the venture doesn't talk down to the service users, which means they respect and value all children and youngsters that come to play at the playground, and they don't see them as just children, or they just respect them and they see them as equal, and even all the opinion matters of the children and youngsters, and they're being listened to, and there is something, we really we appreciate, because we haven't seen that in many other organizations, because most of the times it's just, they're children, and you do something for them instead of with them, and that is something, that we found really, a good conclusion.
A third key item is the unique culture that is present at the venture, which is very difficult to explain, but as the venture has been here for 30 years, the venture has changed, but the community has changed with it. And this has resulted in a number of things that are different here from basically any other place in the world. A number of examples are that children are used to speaking to adults as equals, which we're not really used to back in the Netherlands, and I've never really seen to this extent in other places. They feel they've got the right to be heard, the right to speak their mind, and the right to basically be themselves and have their opinions heard. Another thing is that there's a big sense of belonging here with everyone who comes down here every day. That they come down here, they feel this is their personal space, they have their own space where they can be themselves and they know they're safe. The venture's culture has changed over the past couple of years, obviously, but as the venture changes and the community around it changes, they do interweave with each other and they influence each other in various ways.
Also, the venture is very process-based, which means there is very much time put into building up relationships and doing activities, not for doing the activities, but the activity is itself a goal, while a lot of organizations have a goal they want to achieve with a certain activity, while here the activity is the ultimate goal, or just a conversation is the goal. So a lot of things are going on the playground are what they are, and that's the thing they work for, and not just to achieve something or to change a person, but just the person can be itself, the youngster can be themselves and do what they want to do, and they don't be pushed in something the venture wants to do, but just they can express themselves and be who they are, and that's something we haven't really found before in the Netherlands.
The fifth item is that play is means in itself, which does conclude with that, but play as a means in itself does mean that children do learn a lot through play, through their experiences here, and this is vastly recognized by the literature we've read about play. Children do learn through various ways of playing, motor play or active play or game play. There's loads of different things and they can use all of these things. But the thing is, the venture doesn't use play as a goal or as a means to install this information. They use it as play as a means in itself and as a good thing for the children to interact in.
Then the venture is always open to new ideas, and I think that is also resonant. The playground children are able to express themselves, and if there can make any improvements, the venture is open to that. If children have ideas or things, the venture doesn't say no first, but they just listen to them, and then they see whether they can achieve them ideas or if they can do work from that. And also the staff has been stimulated to think about new projects or things the children or youngsters can benefit of, and they just collaborate together, the children and the staff as well, so they all can, they think about new things, and that's, if it's possible, they be achieved in projects.
Another thing is the large age group that the venture works with. Basically anyone can come into the venture at any point in their lives, but the main age group that the playground provides for is from 5 to 18, sorry. Which is still a very large age group with a lot of different interests for the different people. Adolescents have a very different set of interests from children around the age of 5 or 6. And the venture does try to give the best opportunities for all of these people to express themselves and to enjoy themselves at the venture. And that is something that a lot of organizations do try to pigeonhole a lot more with different sets of age groups.
And then the last one, the venture works from bottom up, which means that the venture sees what's happening in the community or problems arising in the playground, and then tries to help to prevent these problems or just respond to them. Especially if you think about because the venture was created to reduce crime, but during the years other problems occurred, like the educational aspect, and the venture tried to make projects for them as well. And the latest is the healthy living and projects to promote healthy living. So I think the venture sees problems or things happening and then tries to find a way to respond to them. And that's the last conclusion we got from our research.
So the next part will be the theorems, which we've sent to Mr. Miller earlier. I don't know if you've got them with you.
Yep.
Alright. So basically, you choose one which Peggy and I have to defend, one per person.
Oh. Have I got that with me? No, I've got all the assessment framework, but I haven't got the theorems with me. I'm printing that off.
All right. Well, I don't actually have mine with me, but
why don't you choose one?
All right. Well,
and explain it to me.
One of mine was that play work is a profession that should be introduced in the Netherlands, which I'm a strong believer of, because I did read up a lot about play in itself during these past couple of months. Glinda University has a vast variety of books about play and the way play can be used. And I do believe that children do learn a lot through play, albeit subconsciously. But these things are things that they do use a lot more later in life. And seeing as play work is not known at all in the Netherlands, I do think that's a thing that's missed a lot, because a lot of people in the Netherlands do think of play either as something that children just do or as a means to gain different goals. And I really do strongly believe that play should be viewed as a right in itself, and every child does have the right to play in every way they want. And play work is a good way to facilitate that and to help the children express themselves and learn more about themselves and the world around them through play.
Can I ask you a question about that? How then is it possible to use, to stimulate ideas around play without condescending to the young people and directing their play. How do you get round the problem that play is often used as a directive strategy? How does the venture get round that problem?
That is quite a difficult thing, but the way the venture does it is it's an open access playground, so people come and go as they please, and they just interact with each other, and the staff are here to facilitate play but not to tell them what games there are or what to do. So basically the children do choose their own games, and if people around, staff around the venture do see the way the children interact with each other and the different kinds of play they do use, then they can sort of install these little tiny things, like when they're climbing a tree, just to make them realize that they shouldn't go too high. Or
so it's possible for the workers here to generate play ideas and play projects based on the interests of the young people involved, right?
That's something you see
rather than so it ties in with the point you made about a bottom-up inclusive approach, where you're facilitating learning that is relevant to the young people rather than imposing an external structure, an external play curriculum, if you like, that is not necessarily what the young people need. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's entwined with their own interests and the way they usually interact with each other, and that is then used to install little pearls of wisdom.
That's good.
And just thinking about Toby's question, how important do you think is the creation of a physical environment that helps that to happen, and also an emotional environment?
The physical environment, I think, is very important, because what we've got from the children in the interviews was that they are very happy to have their own space and to have the structures and have the American swings and have everything around here which they can use in their play. And when people don't have these things, they can use other areas, but the play, of course, is influenced by the environment and the things they can use. So it does really influence each other. And the emotional environment is, of course, of the utmost importance. They need to feel safe. They need to know that whatever they do, there is someone they can come up to and talk to. And they should know that they are not being pushed into a pigeonhole, so to speak, in what they can do, but are basically free to be themselves.
And do you see this reflected in the behaviour of the workers here, that they are playing with the children rather than imposing on them games that are generated, if you like, externally outside the children's ideas? Is that something that you notice as a part of the research, that is a pattern that follows through?
Yes, very much so. Not only during the research but also during our internship here. It's usually the children who come up to the staff and ask them to play along with them and to organise a gameplay, so to speak. And
so the workers can then operate as facilitators or animateurs.
That's exactly it, yeah.
Good.
Any other questions? Or? Just a comment on that, and it's very helpful you talking about it, and it helps to sort of helps in my own thinking. But just in terms of the environment, the design of it is that there's the bench playground a bit in the middle. The mugger on that side is more likely to be used for more structured stuff because it's team sports and so on. So there'll be more rules and so on. Whereas on the other side of the playground, it's nature area. It's going to be even less structured and more imaginative.
Yeah, something I really like about the venture. There's play for any type of play, really.
Yeah. And then the early years stuff being closer to the building makes it more secure. So there's a reflection of different types of play in different areas, as it were, that the environment was sort of kind of deliberately designed to try and sort of allow those things that you've described to happen.
This model of play that you've described, how does that translate into other settings? For example, say residentials up at Manta, that sort of thing. How does that work off-site, if you like? when children are taken elsewhere. Is that still possible to do that?
Basically, I want to look more into it. I want to look more into play work as a whole, really. But what I have seen is, for example, the play day in Circa we went to a couple of months ago, where a number of different organizations came there with a number of things the children could do. And children from around the neighborhood there came up to the field where everything was set up. And there were a number of things that were set up previously where there was very structured play and they knew what they had to do with it. What the venture did was take a number of things, a number of tires, a number of ropes, a number of all different sort of things, and just put them out and let the children decide what to do. And thing is, they actually really did. They built an obstacle course, they used the tires to balance themselves or to run around with it, and basically the idea of the venture did translate to their parts.
That's interesting. So it can be used in sort of an outreach project to happen elsewhere.
Yeah.
And have you been on trips with the venture or camping or anything?
I have been on camping last year,
Right.
and that was amazing to see for me personally, but what I really liked about the camping was that you go up there and basically you've got a number of activities that you can do, but the children are still allowed to choose what they want to do, and whatever they want to do, basically they're free in the field and they can again play as they want to. And whenever they want to do something more structured, they can talk to the staff, and we try to facilitate that.
Is there any evidence of the work that happens here in terms of like the patterns of play that happen here also being transferred back into their home lives or not? Do you get any sense of their parents and their families picking up on the ethos that's generated here?
No, I can't say I've actually looked into that as a first thing.
No, I just wonder whether young people
it.
speak about it, or whether that is something that they specifically do when they're here, and it doesn't reflect back into their family lives.
I don't think it's worth looking into, actually. I'll keep it in mind.
It would be. It's an interesting point as to whether that way of thinking, where it goes from here, where the conversations that young people must have outside the venture, how much of that reflects the ethos of what goes on here and where it goes to. And it's possibly not something you covered, but I wonder whether young people during the research spoke very much about their home lives or not.
No, not really. We basically mostly spoke about what they do at the venture. We did touch upon their home lives in what they do when they're not at the venture, how they play then, which is, from the people we've interviewed, which was quite different. They usually just go on their gaming consoles or hang around with friends, but with fewer numbers, and they do different things. But we haven't really delved into that too deeply, and I do think it's worth looking into.
It's just an interesting area. I wonder how they make sense, and whether you've got any indication of how they make sense of what seems to be two contrasting environments, their home life and the lives that they have when they're here.
Well, I think it's not just their home life, but everywhere, because the approach that you describe, which I'm enormously pleased you described, because that's what we try and set out to do, is that children are respected for who they are and not what we prefer them to be or anything else, and that it's their space and they determine those things and they become much more confident as a result and so on, is that naturally sets up a tension with other places that don't employ that. Typically school, but most other places don't consciously set out to create that sort of a culture. And that question of what sort of tensions that's then set up is very interesting, and I've never really thought about it a great deal. I mean, I'm aware that most visitors who come down will often say at the beginning of a short while, wow, what confident kids. And they're being confident in their own environment. But it's a very different environment to the other ones. And we've done nothing really to explore what that means for kids.
Well, you wonder whether that confidence is a function of how they expect to be treated when they're here, that they've almost got permission to be confident in their relationships with adults here because that's what the culture says. Isn't it?
Yeah,
Whereas
it's something that's
elsewhere,
nicely described in the report in the part about adventurous cultures.
Yeah.
I do think it does carry out because of work that we do with kids who have been very damaged, and through our Year 10 and 11 project, for instance, and they all report being much more confident and so on as a result of that, and it takes them out, and therefore, and we nurture them into college and other places so they can transfer that newly learned confidence elsewhere, but that's in a very specific programme. And I think generally speaking that does happen, but in terms of studying it consciously and thinking about it, that's not something that particularly occurred to me before, particularly in terms of the tensions and what people think and how kids handle that.
I just wonder what goes through their minds.
Yeah, absolutely.
They must be aware of the contrast between, say, what happens here in school and what happens here in their home lives, maybe, in their street life.
You do, I mean, thinking about it, I recall quite a number of comments from parents and other people about that subject. They've not really ever put it together as a subject.
It's sort of a project really for them, isn't it? For them, it's something that perhaps you could, I don't know, do video diaries or some sort of another project could be carried out just to see how they make sense of those contrasts.
And you could do a lot of work on that, not just how they do, but help them through that.
Yes,
process.
because they must really be aware of it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that was really interesting. I enjoyed that.
Right, thank you.
I loved it. It was absolutely
Yeah,
fantastic.
excellent.
Yeah.
I just have to do my
Theory.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had actually, I wanted to do the same, but it's already done. But I have, the social workers should be able to concentrate more on the process and on the product, because when I came here, then I saw, because this organization is all about the play and the activities itself instead of reaching certain goals. Well, where I was when I was studying, in the first couple of years, a lot of things went, how do you achieve certain things through play? Because I'm doing the social pedagogue profile, and there's a lot of creative activities, but how can we put them creative activities to reach a certain goal? Well, here was the creative activity was the goal itself, and that really opened my eyes in terms of how can we, as a social worker, how can you be more focused on that part of things instead of achieving certain goals?
I think you're right, because the work culture outside, the education culture outside, whether it's formal education or social education, tends, certainly in formal education, you've got a culture of accountability and target setting and so on. So what's going on here is at variance with that. And I wonder whether it's an opportunity for people outside this setting to learn. Do you think there's possibilities for people who think in terms of a task culture to learn from a more open-ended approach and learn that actually there are a lot of outcomes that you can't account for, that the part of the charm, I think, of the work in this work area is that you never know how much you have given to the people that you work with. They can't necessarily tell you, and they maybe don't even know at the time. And I think that's where systems of accountability fall down. Do you think there's a learning possibility there for the, if you like, the dominant culture that's focused on targets?
I think it does, because if it's seen here, children are respected and they've been seen as an equal. And I think a lot of organizations, they just make their products, they make their projects for them instead of with them. So I think other organizations can learn from it, because if they really gonna interact with the people they work for and ask what they want, and and see them as a human, and as an equal. I mean, I think if you're a professional, you have to be equal, and help them with the things they want to be helped with, and not pushing it on them like, you need to be like that, or you need to do this, and I think it's an interaction. You have to see what they want, and
Because I'm particularly interested, I mean, one of the areas I've done research on is youth workers in schools, and where teachers learn from the social educators that work there about perhaps a more respectful relationship with the young people, perhaps giving them valuing time spent listening to what they have to say, rather than always directing them towards another task.
Because it's scary. Well, as a professional, it can be scary if you really have to listen to someone. Then you have to think about yourself that you don't have all the answers.
Yes.
Well, if you're gonna say, we're gonna do this, and then you're gonna be not superior, but then you're the one with all the knowledge. While the people itself and the youngsters themselves have maybe all the knowledge, but just don't know how to get to that point. Well, in interaction, you can help them to see their own things and find their own answers, instead of pushing it on them and say, this is how it works, or this is the way. I
think that's a very important point about knowledge. I mean, because it's very easy to end up giving people knowledge that they either don't really need or don't really know what to do with. And I think one of the problems with schools is that kids don't see the relevance or the importance of what they're doing, that there are other things that they feel are far more important. And I personally think that's where interesting learning could take place, that allowing yourself to explore what children need to know rather than what we're going to tell them that they need to know. And I think that's where it's interesting.
I think one of the key things about what we try and do is heal as well as help kids to grow. And education is more about growth, and it helps the healing process. But a large number of the kids that we are damaged, are damaged every day by being told that they're failures, or they might have illnesses or learning disabilities or whatever, which puts them up against things which then reject them, and therefore, for a lot of their kids, they need an amount of healing all the time, because every day they get harmed by those events, and therefore having a nurturing environment, a sort of healing environment, is very important, and that then kind of dovetails into an educational or learning.
Well, it ties up very much with the point that Peggy's making about process, isn't it? Part of the process of engagement is giving space for that healing to take place.
And I suppose for me, it's about trying to have as holistic a sort of a set of experiences that are kind of like bathing someone in a nurturing environment, so that they get immersed in it, and it comes from all directions. So it's like lying in a hot bath, and you don't necessarily know what comes of that. No. And it's like you use a mystery. And all sorts of different things, and sometimes you'll be entirely surprised, or sometimes you think there's absolutely nothing has come of it, and then maybe 15 years later you meet someone and say, do you remember that trip we went on? And you think, fuck, that was
not really.
Yes, I do. It was a disaster. And they say, this was life-changing stuff. It was fantastic. And you think, that's not how I saw it at all. But that you can't predict. But that whole thing about mystery, it's like, let's measure love, or loyalty, or trust, and we'll put it in a test tube, and we'll see what the outcome is, and we'll do those things, and it's like, for fuck's sake,
it's not going to happen.
This is like, you're weird. Just enjoy love and trust and those sorts of things, and the idea that you're going to measure it all is you do that, but I think
that's fine.
You're lost the plot, mate.
it's something to put in your annual report, but not really the most important thing that happens, because I think, as I said before, part of the fun of what we do is the fact we don't actually know quite how much we've given to people, you know,
I think it's
what they've gained from it.
One of the standards for youth work has been that obsession with turning it into education.
Yeah.
And there's got to be outcomes.
That's why I talk about it the other way around. What formal educators can learn from the sort of work that you're talking about now. And I think that's a particularly interesting area.
Yeah. All the things you can examine are hugely less worth to what makes up people than the things that you can't. Yeah. So we concentrate on the things that we can test tubes and
things that we can quantify.
They're the things that matter least. And the more you concentrate on the things that matter least, the worse of the problem you have on the things that matter more. You're going the wrong way. Look at the overall outcome. Why are we the Accrington Stanley of the modern world in terms of outcomes for young people? Because we got in the wrong fucking direction. Like, well, if we carry on going in that direction a bit more, try harder going in that
more
direction, we'll get there.
Would be good.
Yeah, we'll measure it more. It's like, right, okay, so one sign of the sure sign of madness is carrying on doing the same thing you've always done, but expecting a different result.
Yes.
No, it's the wrong direction, mate.
So you've stimulated a very good discussion there, Peggy. Well done. So, thank you.
Are there any more questions about the research or the report or the presentation? Anything?
No, I think you've summarised it very well for me.
Absolutely. I haven't finished reading it, and I'm going to read it on my holiday with my family as well. Also, I've played quite absorbed in activities like Have Family Will. When I first met Anne, she was on the health visitors course at Cartrefley. Yeah. And she became a volunteer on camp. John's nurse, straight on the street. That would be very useful for all sorts of things. And I thought, well, that would be useful in my own life, really. But there's more calculations than just that. But yeah, so I'm going to share that with them. But for me, I suppose, listening to you talk, it was about, you picked out all the key things for me about what makes up lecture. It was a very perceptive study that you've done. So thank you.
And I think the strength of it is based on a lot of experiential learning from your placements.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gave you a springboard for doing the work in as sympathetic a way as you have. You know.
I think if we did a placement here, then I think the entire research would gone totally different because
it really shows.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic effort first, and I think probably going back to Holland and being over a period of time and thinking about it and measuring against other things and is all important to come up with that sort of depth of observation, I suppose. So that's
and the best thing to say about your presentation is that I'm going to take bits of it away and use in my classes, because I'm going to steal bits of it and use them.
Okay, that's good to hear.
I will, of course, reference it correctly.
Yeah, and I'll be using. Well, I mean, we already talked about
putting the report on the
website and using it as a sort of foundation stone for whole for putting in place other student stuff that has gone on before this, but most particularly student stuff that will go on after this. So it'll be the sort of centre bit of how students kind of start to look at the venture, use the venture, and so on in their learning. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
Thank you.
It's provided me with new insights as well. So it's good, fantastic. I kept thinking now that I made a mistake to not have that for the other staff. And thinking, we should have had that upstairs, really.
Yeah.
Well, like I said before, we can go back and do the bit about the 8-point thing.
Yeah.
We also have the
results.
video.
And you also have the video.
Someone doesn't want to do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can do it again, that's no problem.
It'll be on YouTube later, will it?
Well, we're going to go upstairs now and go through that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So could you just do a very quick introduction about what you did?
Yeah.
About the process?
But we'll have to discuss a bit with Mr. Miller first, but we'll be back in about 15-20 minutes. And
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
Alright.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Right,
Thank
Okay.
you. See you in a bit.